The massive space station floated in the darkness between two star systems like a silent metal giant. Nexus Prime was bigger than most cities and served as neutral ground where enemies could meet without shooting each other. Today it would host another prisoner exchange between the Saurian Empire and the Human Federation. General Zixthara stepped off his transport ship with heavy footsteps that echoed through the docking bay. He stood nearly 8 feet tall with dark green scales that covered his reptilian body from head to toe. His yellow eyes moved constantly as he scanned everything around him. 3 rows of sharp teeth showed when he spoke, and his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. The gold and silver decorations on his military uniform marked him as one of the highest-ranking officers in the Saurian fleet. Behind him walked 6 heavily armed Saurian guards carrying energy weapons that could cut through steel. Their black armor made clicking sounds as they moved. Commander Victor followed close behind the general carrying a datapad with prisoner information. His scales were lighter green and he was slightly smaller than Zixthara, but still much larger than any human. The Human Federation representatives waited in the center of the docking bay. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood in front wearing her blue diplomatic uniform with gold trim. She was average height for a human woman with dark hair pulled back in a neat style. Her brown eyes watched the approaching Saurians without showing any fear. 2 human security officers flanked her wearing standard gray uniforms and carrying basic sidearms. General Zixthara looked at the small group of humans and made a sound that might have been laughter. His forked tongue flicked out briefly before he spoke in heavily accented English. "Captain Rodriguez, I presume," he said while looking down at her. "You humans are even smaller than our intelligence reports suggested." Elena kept her expression neutral and professional. "General Zixthara, welcome to Nexus Prime. Shall we proceed with the exchange as agreed?" The general's yellow eyes narrowed as he studied her calm demeanor. Most species showed some sign of nervousness when facing Saurian warriors, but this human seemed completely relaxed. He found this both puzzling and slightly irritating. "Very well," Zixthara replied. "We have brought your prisoners as requested. 5 of your soldiers captured during the recent conflict at Kepler 442b. They are unharmed and ready for transfer." Commander Victor activated his datapad and began reading. Marine Sergeant Danny Price captured during ground assault operations. Navy Lieutenant Susan Webb taken prisoner when her fighter was shot down. Marine Corporal Kevin Stone captured during evacuation procedures. Army Specialist Lisa Gray taken during defensive operations. Marine Private Robert Kim captured during reconnaissance mission. Elena nodded as she listened to each name. These were good soldiers who had families waiting for them back home. Getting them back safely was worth almost any reasonable trade. "Thank you, General," she said. "In exchange, we are prepared to transfer the Saurian prisoners we captured during the same engagement. We have 8 officers and enlisted personnel ready for immediate return to your custody." Zixthara's eyes widened slightly. 8 Saurian prisoners for 5 humans seemed like a favorable trade, but something felt wrong about it. The numbers didn't match his expectations based on standard exchange protocols. 8 for 5, he said slowly. "This seems generous, Captain." "Are you certain these numbers are correct?" Elena reached into her jacket and pulled out a small data device. "Actually, General, I need to correct that information. We're returning 7 Saurian prisoners, not 8. The general's expression darkened and his voice became threatening. "You dare to change the terms of our agreement at the last moment, human." "This is unacceptable. Please let me finish," Elena said calmly. "We're returning 7 Saurian prisoners, and in exchange we'd like our 5 soldiers back plus 1 additional human currently in your custody." Zixthara looked confused. His intelligence reports hadn't mentioned any other human prisoners. "What? Additional human? We have no other humans in our detention facilities." Elena activated her data device and showed him a holographic display. "Marine Corporal Jake Morrison. He was captured 3 weeks ago during a solo reconnaissance mission in your territory." The general studied the image floating above the device. It showed a human male who looked very ordinary by any standard. Jake Morrison appeared to be in his late 20s with brown hair and average build. He wore basic marine combat gear that looked primitive compared to Saurian technology. Nothing about him seemed special or noteworthy. "This is your additional prisoner," Zixtara asked with obvious disbelief in his voice. "One small human soldier. For 7 of my trained warriors, that's correct," Elena replied without hesitation. Zixtara looked at the hologram again, then back at Elena. Something about this exchange bothered him, but he couldn't identify exactly what it was. The trade ratios seemed wrong, and this Jake Morrison didn't look like any kind of elite soldier or valuable asset. "Captain Rodriguez," he said with growing suspicion. "What makes this one human worth 7 Saurian military personnel? Is he some kind of high-ranking officer or technical specialist?" Elena shook her head. "Corporal Morrison is exactly what his rank suggests. A non-commissioned officer with standard Marine training." The general's confusion turned to anger. "You insult me with this proposal. One ordinary human foot soldier is not worth 7 of my people. This Jake Morrison appears to be nothing more than basic infantry," he gestured dismissively at the hologram. "Look at him, Captain. He's small even by human standards. His equipment is outdated and simple. His rank is low level. What possible value could such a soldier have?" Elena's expression remained completely calm. "General Zixtara, I can assure you that Corporal Morrison is considered a fair trade by my superiors." "Your superiors clearly don't understand military mathematics," Zixtara replied with a harsh laugh. "This soldier looks like he couldn't fight his way out of a paper container, much less pose any threat to trained Saurian warriors." Commander Victor leaned closer to his general and spoke quietly. "So perhaps we should accept this favorable trade. 7 for 1 gives us a significant advantage in return." Personnel Zixtara considered this, but his pride as a military commander made the trade feel wrong. "No, Victor. There's something they're not telling us about this Morrison character. No military organization trades 7 experienced soldiers for 1 low-ranking Marine unless that Marine has special value." Elena waited patiently while the 2 Saurians discussed the situation. She showed no signs of nervousness or concern about their hesitation. "Captain," Zixtara said finally, "I want to know why this one human is worth so many of my people. What aren't you telling me about Jake Morrison?" "I've told you everything relevant, General. He's a Marine corporal with standard training and equipment. Nothing more, nothing less." The general stared at her for a long moment, trying to read her expression. Humans were difficult for Saurians to understand because their facial expressions and body language were so different from reptilian species. "Very well," he said at last. "We accept your terms, but I want it clearly understood that I consider this trade heavily in our favor. If this Morrison proves to be anything other than what you claim, I will consider it an act of deception." Elena nodded politely. "Understood, General. Shall we proceed with the exchange?" Zixtara gestured to his guards who activated their communication devices. Within minutes, both groups of prisoners were being escorted into the docking bay under heavy security. The 5 human soldiers looked tired but unharmed as they walked toward Elena. The 7 Saurian prisoners moved with obvious relief toward their general, but it was the 8th figure that caught everyone's attention. Jake Morrison walked between 2 Saurian guards without any apparent distress. He was exactly as his hologram had suggested. Average height and build with calm brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. His Marine uniform was clean but showed signs of wear. What struck General Zixtara most was how utterly ordinary this human appeared. Jake Morrison looked like he could be any one of millions of human soldiers. There was nothing intimidating or impressive about him at all. "This is your valuable prisoner," Zixtara said with undisguised mockery. "Captain Rodriguez, if this represents the quality of human military personnel, then this war will be over much sooner than expected." The Saurian detention facility was a massive structure built into an asteroid floating in deep space. Its metal walls were 3 feet thick and designed to hold the most dangerous prisoners from across the galaxy. Jake Morrison walked through the corridors between 4 armed guards while General Zixtara observed from a viewing platform above. The human looked even smaller, inside the facility surrounded by towering Saurian architecture. Everything was built for creatures much larger than humans. The doorways stood 10 feet high and the corridors were wide enough for vehicles to pass through. Jake had to take 2 steps for every one of his guards, but he kept pace without difficulty. "Put him in interrogation chamber 7, Zixthara commanded through his communication device. "I want to observe the initial questioning personally," the guards led Jake into a room with gray metal walls and a single chair in the center. Bright lights shone down from the ceiling while cameras recorded everything from multiple angles. Jake sat down calmly and looked around the room with what appeared to be casual interest. Interrogator Keshlin entered the chamber carrying a datapad and scanning device. She was smaller than most saurians, standing only 7 feet tall with bright green scales and sharp claws. Her specialty was breaking down prisoners through psychological pressure and environmental manipulation. "Human," she said in accented English. "State your name, rank, and service number." Jake looked directly at her and spoke clearly. "Morrison Jake, Corporal, service number 7749218. Keshlin made notes on her datapad. "What was your mission in Saurian territory?" "Morrison Jake, Corporal, service number 7749218. The interrogator's eyes narrowed. "Human, you will answer my questions or face consequences." Jake repeated the same information without any change in tone or expression. From the observation room, General Zixthara watched with growing irritation. Most prisoners broke down within the first hour of questioning. They either became angry and started shouting or showed fear and began begging. This human did neither. "Increase the room temperature," Keshlin commanded. The environmental controls activated and the chamber began heating up. Within minutes, the temperature reached levels that would be uncomfortable for most species. Sweat appeared on Jake's forehead, but his breathing remained steady and his posture unchanged. "Tell me about human military positions in Sector 12, Keshlin demanded. "Morrison Jake, Corporal, service number 7749218. The temperature continued rising until it reached dangerous levels for most galactic species. Jake's uniform became soaked with sweat, but he never asked for water or complained about the heat. His repetitive answers never varied. Dr. Himmler entered the observation room carrying medical scanning equipment. He was the facility's chief scientist and specialized in studying alien physiology. His pale blue scales and multiple eyes gave him an insect-like appearance. "General, I request permission to run physiological scans on the human prisoner," he said while setting up his equipment. Zixthara nodded. "Proceed, Doctor. I want to understand what makes this creature so resistant to standard interrogation techniques." Dr. Himmler activated his scanners and pointed them at Jake through the one-way viewing window. The readings that appeared on his screen made him pause and check the equipment calibration. "General, these readings are unusual," he said with confusion in his voice. "The human stress hormone levels are barely elevated despite the environmental pressure." "What do you mean, Doctor?" "Most species would show significant biological stress responses under these conditions. Elevated heart rate, increased adrenaline production, rapid breathing patterns. This human shows minor increases at best." Zixthara leaned forward to look at the scanner display. "Could your equipment be malfunctioning?" Dr. Himmler ran diagnostic tests on all his instruments. "No, sir, everything is working correctly. The human's physiological responses are simply not what we expected." In the interrogation chamber, Keshlin tried a different approach. She dimmed the lights until the room was nearly dark, then activated sonic disruptors that created unpleasant, high-frequency sounds. Most prisoners found this combination extremely disturbing. Jake sat quietly in the darkness and continued, giving the same response to every question. His breathing stayed regular and he showed no signs of agitation or fear. "This is impossible," Keshlin muttered to herself. "Every species has breaking points." She tried cold instead of heat. The room temperature dropped rapidly until frost began forming on the metal surfaces. Jake's breath became visible in the frigid air, but he never shivered or asked for warmth. Dr. Himmler's scanner showed even more unusual readings. "General, the human's body temperature regulation is remarkable. He's maintaining core temperature despite extreme environmental changes." "How is that possible, Doctor? I'm not certain, sir. Perhaps humans evolved on a planet with extreme temperature variations. Their adaptation capabilities appear far superior to our estimates. Hours passed with no progress in the interrogation. Keshlin tried every technique in her training. She used bright strobing lights that would disorient most prisoners. She played recordings of disturbing sounds at high volume. She flooded the room with scents that triggered panic responses in many species. Jake Morrison sat through all of it, giving the same 3 pieces of information over and over again. His calm demeanor never changed, and he showed no signs of breaking. Down, bring in the truth serum, Keshlin ordered in frustration. A medical technician entered with injection equipment containing a powerful drug that forced most species to answer questions honestly. The technician prepared to inject Jake, but paused when Dr. Himna's voice came through the communication system. Wait, the doctor called out. I need to analyze the human's blood chemistry first. We don't know how their physiology will react. To our truth serums, a small blood sample was taken from Jake's arm. He allowed the procedure without resistance and showed no reaction to the needle. Dr. Himner ran the sample through his analysis equipment, and the results made him call General Zixthara immediately. So you need to see this, Dr. Himner said urgently. The human's blood chemistry is unlike anything in our database. Zixthara examined the test results. What am I looking at, Doctor? Extremely high concentrations of stress-resistant compounds. Enhanced oxygen carrying capacity. Chemical markers that suggest adaptation to high-gravity environments. General, I think humans may have evolved under much harsher conditions than we assumed. The general stared at the data. What kind of planet would produce these adaptations? A very dangerous one, sir. High gravity, extreme temperature variations, probably significant atmospheric challenges. These readings suggest humans come from what we would classify as a death world. In the interrogation chamber, Jake continued sitting calmly while Keshlin prepared for another round of questioning. She had been working for 12 hours straight and was becoming exhausted. The human prisoner showed no signs of fatigue. Human, she said with clear frustration. You cannot maintain this resistance forever. Tell me about your mission. Jake looked at her with steady brown eyes. Morrison Jake, Corporal, Service Number 7749218. General Zixthara watched from the observation room with growing unease. His certainty about human weakness was beginning to crack. This ordinary-looking soldier was proving far more resilient than any Saurian prisoner he had ever seen. Doctor, he said slowly, run a complete analysis on everything we know about human biology. I want to understand what we're dealing with. Dr. Himminter nodded and began gathering data from across the Saurian intelligence network. What he found would change everything they thought they knew about humanity. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison sat in his chair and waited patiently for whatever came next. He had been trained for situations exactly like this, and so far everything was proceeding according to his expectations. The real test would come later when the Saurians discovered who they had actually captured. Dr. Himminter worked through the night analyzing every piece of data the Saurian Empire had collected about human biology. His laboratory was filled with screens displaying genetic sequences, medical scans, and physiological charts. What he discovered made him question everything they thought they knew about Earth's children. The initial blood work from Jake Morrison was just the beginning. Dr. Himminter accessed the medical records from other human prisoners they had captured over the past year. Every single sample showed the same unusual characteristics. Enhanced bone density that was nearly twice normal for most galactic species. Muscle fibers that were incredibly efficient at oxygen utilization. Neural pathways that showed rapid adaptation to stress. Computer display environmental data for planet Earth. He commanded. The holographic display showed a blue and green world that looked deceptively peaceful. But as Dr. Himminter dug deeper into the planetary data, his scales turned pale with shock. Earth's gravity was 1.4 times what Saurians considered normal. The atmospheric pressure was 30% higher than comfortable levels. The planet experienced massive temperature swings from -40 degrees to +50 degrees Celsius. Weather patterns included violent storms that could level entire forests. This cannot be correct, Dr. Himmler muttered while double-checking. The information, but the data was accurate. Earth was classified as a high-gravity, high-pressure variable climate world. Most Saurian scientists would have labeled it uninhabitable for intelligent life. Yet humans had not just survived there but had thrived and developed advanced technology. The doctor's communication device chimed with an incoming message. Intelligence Officer Quendra requested an immediate meeting with General Zixtara. Her message was marked urgent and classified at the highest security level. In his private office, General Zixtara paced back and forth while his tail swished with agitation. 3 days of interrogation had produced nothing useful from the human prisoner. Jake Morrison continued giving only his name, rank, and service number no matter what pressure they applied. Intelligence Officer Quendra entered the office carrying encrypted data files. She was a smaller Saurian with dark blue scales and cybernetic implants that enhanced her analytical capabilities. Her job was gathering and interpreting enemy intelligence. General, we have a significant problem, she said without any greeting pleasantries. Zixtara stopped pacing and focused his yellow eyes on her. What kind of problem, Quendra? I've been analyzing intercepted human military communications from the past month. The prisoner exchange was mentioned in several encrypted transmissions that our codebreakers finally decoded. She activated a holographic display showing communication logs with timestamps and sender identifications. Sir, the humans refer to Jake Morrison by a different designation in their classified channels. What designation? The general asked with growing concern. They call him Ghost Walker, Quendra replied. It appears to be an operational coding name, used only for their most experienced special operations personnel. The general's blood ran cold. Special operations meant elite soldiers trained for missions behind enemy lines. Continue your report. Quendra pulled up additional files. Cross-referencing this coding name with human military databases we accessed during previous operations shows disturbing information. Ghost Walker has been involved in at least 15 deep reconnaissance missions over the past 2 years. Reconnaissance missions where Zixtara demanded? Saurian-controlled territory, sir, including 3 facilities that suffered unexplained security breaches and equipment malfunctions. No enemy personnel were ever detected, but sensitive information was later found missing from computer systems. The general sat down heavily in his chair. Are you telling me this Jake Morrison has been conducting espionage operations against us for 2 years? That appears to be correct, sir. The human military records show he has specialized training in infiltration, surveillance, and escape techniques. He's also qualified in xenobiology, which means he understands alien physiology and psychology. Dr. Himmler arrived at the office carrying his research data. His usually calm demeanor showed signs of severe stress. General, I have completed my analysis of human biology and the results are extremely concerning. What did you find, Doctor? Zixtara asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer would not be pleasant. Dr. Himmler activated his own holographic display. Humans evolved on what we would classify as a death world, General. Their home planet has environmental conditions that would kill most galactic species within hours. The display showed comparative data between Earth and typical habitable worlds. Earth's gravity is 40% higher than our homeworld. The atmospheric composition includes oxygen levels that would be toxic to many species. Weather patterns include hurricanes, tornadoes, and electrical storms of incredible violence. What does this mean for our current situation? The general asked. It means humans are physically adapted for survival under extreme conditions, Dr. Himmler continued. Their bone structure can withstand impacts that would shatter saurian skeletons. Their cardiovascular system operates efficiently under high stress. Their pain tolerance is remarkably high. Quendra added her intelligence to the medical analysis. Sir, the human military doctrine takes advantage of these natural capabilities. They train their soldiers to operate in environments that other species cannot survive. General Zixtara felt his confidence crumbling. Show me everything we know about this Ghost Walker, The two officers combined their data to create a comprehensive profile. Jake Morrison was 32 years old, not 28 as previously estimated. He had been trained at advanced military schools specializing in special operations. His service record showed successful missions on 12 different worlds, including several with hostile environments. General Quendra said quietly. There's something else you need to know about the prisoner exchange. What now? The timing was not coincidental. Our intelligence suggests the humans deliberately allowed Jake Morrison to be captured during his last mission. The prisoner exchange was planned weeks in advance. Zixtara's yellow eyes widened with shock. Are you saying this was intentional? The evidence suggests they wanted him inside our detention facility, sir. A controlled capture followed by a predetermined extraction schedule. Dr. Himman checked his medical scanners. That would explain his unusual calm during interrogation. If he expected to be captured and knew rescue was coming, he would have no reason to break under pressure. The general stood up and walked to his window overlooking the detention facility. In the distance, he could see the interrogation complex where Jake Morrison sat waiting patiently in his cell. What had seemed like a valuable prisoner now looked like a carefully planned intelligence operation. How long has he been gathering information about our security procedures? Zixtara asked. Since the moment he arrived, sir, Quendra replied. Every question our interrogators asked revealed information about our methods. Every security protocol he observed gave him data about our weaknesses. Dr. Himmler pulled up building schematics on his display. General, the detention facility was designed to hold prisoners from species with standard physical capabilities. If humans can survive in extreme environments, then our containment systems may be inadequate. What are you suggesting, Doctor? I'm suggesting that Jake Morrison may not be as securely contained as we assumed. Human physical capabilities combined with special operations training could make him capable of escape attempts. We never considered possible. General Zixtara realized with growing horror that he had been completely outmaneuvered. What he thought was a favorable prisoner exchange was actually a sophisticated intelligence operation. The human he had mocked as weak and insignificant was actually one of their most dangerous operatives. Double the security around the interrogation complex immediately, he commanded. And prepare for the possibility that our prisoner may attempt escape. But even as he gave the orders, Zixtara suspected it might already be too late. Jake Morrison had been studying their facility for 3 days. If he was truly the elite soldier the intelligence suggested, then he had probably already identified multiple escape routes. The general looked at his reflection in the window and saw a military commander who had seriously underestimated his enemy. The question now was whether Jake Morrison would prove just how wrong that estimate had been. Jake Morrison had been counting time in his head since the moment he arrived at the detention facility. 72 hours and 37 minutes had passed since his capture. His internal clock was precise thanks to years of training in environments where keeping track of time could mean the difference between life and death. That the interrogation cell was designed to break prisoners through isolation and discomfort. But Jake found it almost peaceful compared to some places he had operated. The temperature was stable, the air was clean, and nobody was shooting at him. He had endured much worse conditions during survival training on frozen mountain peaks and scorching desert worlds. During the long hours of questioning, Jake had been doing more than just resisting interrogation. His eyes constantly moved around the room, mapping every detail. The ventilation grate in the upper corner was held by 4 bolts that showed slight rust around the edges. The door frame had a small gap where the metal panels didn't quite meet perfectly. The ceiling tiles were standard construction that could be removed with the right leverage. Most importantly, Jake had been listening carefully to sounds from outside his cell. Guard shift changes happened every 8 hours. Meal delivery came at regular intervals. Emergency alarms tested at the same time each day. The facility operated on predictable schedules that created windows of opportunity for someone who knew how to recognize them. Security Chief Rontok received General Zixtara's order to double security with obvious frustration. His department was already stretched thin maintaining the detention facility and adding extra guards. would strain resources further. But orders were orders, especially when they came from a general who seemed increasingly worried about one human. Prisoner, deploy additional patrols in corridor sections 7 through 12, Rantok commanded his staff. Increase monitoring of the interrogation complex and add motion sensors to all ventilation systems. The security chief was a massive saurian even by their standards. His dark red scales were marked with scars from previous military service, and his cybernetic eye replacement allowed him to interface directly with security systems. He took pride in running the most secure detention facility in Saurian space. "Sir," one of his technicians asked, "what exactly are we guarding against?" "The human prisoner is locked in a maximum security cell." Rantok looked at the technician with contempt. "We're guarding against underestimating our enemy. General Zixthara believes this human may be more dangerous than initially assessed." The truth was that Rantok didn't fully understand the concern either. He had reviewed the security footage of Jake Morrison and saw nothing impressive. The human was small, quiet, and showed no signs of aggression or escape attempts. But if the general wanted extra security, then extra security he would provide. In his cell, Jake finished eating the evening meal that had been delivered through a slot in the door. The food was nutritious but bland, designed to sustain prisoners without providing any pleasure. He had eaten much worse during extended missions in hostile territory. As darkness fell over the facility, Jake began the next phase of his plan. He had noticed that the evening guard shift was less alert than the day shift. Night duty was considered boring and safe since most prisoners slept during the dark cycle. This assumption would prove to be a critical mistake. Jake removed his boots and set them aside carefully. His socks had been modified during his initial equipment preparation with thin metal strips woven into the fabric. These strips were undetectable to most security scanners but could be removed and shaped into simple tools. Working slowly and quietly, Jake extracted the metal strips and began forming them into lockpicks and prying tools. His fingers moved with practiced precision gained from years of training in equipment improvisation. Special operations soldiers learned to create weapons and tools from almost any available materials. The ventilation grate had been his primary target from the beginning. During his 3 days in the cell, Jake had noticed that the airflow changed slightly every few hours. This indicated the ventilation system was extensive and connected multiple areas of the facility. More importantly, the grate was positioned where security cameras couldn't observe it clearly. Jake stood on his chair and began working on the first bolt. The metal was harder than expected, but his improvised tools were sufficient for the job. Each turn of the bolt was carefully controlled to avoid making noise that might alert the guards. Security. Chief Rantok was reviewing patrol schedules when his communication device chimed with a priority message. One of his technicians was reporting unusual readings from the motion sensors in ventilation shaft 7. "What kind of readings?" Rantok asked with immediate concern. "Brief vibrations, sir. Could be normal settling of the structure, but the pattern seems irregular." The security chief activated his monitoring systems and watched the sensor displays carefully. The readings showed minor movements that could be explained by thermal expansion or small maintenance issues. But something about the timing bothered him. "Dispatch a maintenance team to check ventilation shaft 7 immediately," he ordered. "And increase patrols in that sector." Jake heard the sound of approaching footsteps in the corridor outside his cell. His enhanced hearing picked up conversations between guards discussing maintenance checks on the ventilation system. This meant his activities had been detected sooner than planned, but not soon enough to prevent his escape. He had already removed 3 of the 4 bolts holding the ventilation grate. The 4th bolt was loosened but left in place to maintain the appearance of security. Jake quickly returned to his bed and arranged his blanket to create the illusion that he was sleeping. The maintenance team arrived in the corridor outside Jake's cell block and began checking various ventilation access points. Their equipment was standard and their procedures were routine. They had no reason to suspect that anyone might be using the ventilation system as an escape route. Jake waited until the maintenance team moved to a different section of the facility. Their inspection had confirmed what he needed to know about the ventilation system layout. The main air circulation shaft ran directly above his cell and connected to larger passages that led throughout the complex. Commander Victor arrived at the security center with updated orders from General Zixthara. The general wanted hourly reports on the human prisoner and immediate notification of any unusual activity. His growing paranoia about Jake Morrison was spreading throughout the command structure. "Has the prisoner shown any signs of escape attempts?" Victor asked Rantok. "Nothing significant, Commander. Standard monitoring shows normal sleep patterns and no aggressive behavior. The maintenance check on ventilation systems revealed minor vibrations but nothing that indicates security problems." Victor nodded but remained concerned. "General Zixthara believes we may be dealing with an elite human operative. Maintain maximum vigilance and report anything unusual immediately in his cell." Jake prepared for the most dangerous part of his escape plan. Removing the final bolt and entering the ventilation system would trigger additional alarms once his absence was discovered. From that point forward, speed and stealth would determine whether his mission succeeded or failed. He had memorized the facility layout from architectural details he observed during his transport and questioning. The ventilation system would take him to the main computer core, where he could access intelligence databases and communication systems. His real mission was not escape but data collection. Jake removed the final bolt and carefully lifted the ventilation. Great. The opening was barely large enough for a human but would be impossible for any Saurian to navigate. This size advantage was something his mission planners had counted on when developing the infiltration strategy. As he pulled himself into the ventilation shaft, Jake smiled slightly. General Zixthara was about to learn exactly why the Human Federation considered Jake Morrison worth 7 Saurian prisoners. Jake Morrison crawled through the ventilation shaft with the silence of a predator moving through familiar territory. The metal ductwork was designed for Saurian maintenance workers who were much larger than humans. What seemed like cramped spaces to the facility designers provided Jake with comfortable room to maneuver. His enhanced hearing picked up conversations from rooms below as he passed over them. Guards discussing duty schedules, technicians running system diagnostics, administrative personnel processing prisoner reports. Each conversation gave him additional intelligence about facility operations and security procedures. The computer core was located 3 levels down from his cell block. Jake had memorized the route during his initial transport when he observed building markers and directional signs. Special operations training taught soldiers to gather intelligence constantly, even when appearing to be helpless prisoners. Security. Chief Rantok was reviewing the evening shift reports when alarm sirens suddenly filled the facility. His cybernetic eye immediately connected to the security network and showed him the source of the problem. Motion sensors in Corridor 12 were detecting unauthorized movement. "All units respond to security breach in Sector 7, Rantok commanded through his communication system. Prisoner escape in progress." Guards throughout the facility abandoned their normal duties and converged on the detention block. Heavy boots echoed through corridors as armed Saurians rushed toward Jake Morrison's cell. What they found there made Rantok realize they were dealing with something far beyond their experience. The cell appeared empty at first glance. Jake's bed was carefully arranged to suggest someone sleeping beneath the blankets. Only close inspection revealed that the ventilation grate had been removed and the prisoner was gone. The improvised tools left behind showed a level of resourcefulness that impressed even hardened security professionals. "How is this possible?" Rantok demanded while examining the modified grate. "These bolts require specialized equipment to remove." His technical team analyzed the metal strips Jake had extracted from his clothing. The modification was so subtle that even detailed security scans had missed it. Whoever had prepared this equipment understood Saurian detection methods perfectly. "Sir," one of the technicians reported, "the prisoner has been gone for at least 30 minutes based on air temperature readings in the cell." Rantok activated emergency protocols and sealed all facility exits. If the human was still inside the complex, they would find him. If he had somehow reached the exterior, then tracking systems would locate him in open space. Jake reached the computer core access point exactly on schedule. His internal clock showed that 47 minutes had passed since he entered the ventilation system. The facility's emergency response was predictable and would give him approximately 20 more minutes before search teams reached his current location. The computer core was a massive room filled with processing units and data storage devices. Saurian technology was advanced but followed logical design principles that Jake had studied during his preparation. Access terminals were clearly marked and security protocols were displayed on wall-mounted screens. Jake dropped silently from the ventilation shaft and approached the main data terminal. His training included basic computer infiltration techniques, but this mission required something more sophisticated. He removed a small device from a hidden pocket in his uniform and connected it to the terminal interface. The device was human technology designed specifically for accessing Saurian computer systems. Intelligence teams had developed it based on captured equipment and defector information. Within seconds, it began downloading facility schematic security protocols and prisoner databases. But Jake's real target was military intelligence. The detention facility stored information about Saurian fleet movements, supply lines, and strategic planning. This data would give human military commanders crucial advantages in future conflicts. General Zixthara received news of the escape with a mixture of rage and grudging respect. The human had played them perfectly from the moment of capture. What seemed like a simple prisoner had turned their most secure facility into a source of intelligence for the enemy. How long until we recapture him? The general demanded of Security Chief Rantok. Sir, the prisoner could be anywhere in the facility. Our search teams are checking every possible hiding place, but the ventilation system connects to hundreds of locations. Zixthara realized that standard search procedures would not work against someone with Jake Morrison's training. Seal the computer core immediately. If he's gathering intelligence, that would be his primary target. Rantok dispatched his best teams toward the computer core, but they were moving through corridors while Jake traveled through hidden passages. The facility's own design worked against them as they tried to corner a prisoner who understood their limitations better than they did. Jake finished downloading the intelligence data and prepared for the most dangerous part of his mission. Escape from the facility would require reaching the docking bay, where human extraction teams would be waiting. But first he needed to send a signal confirming his mission success. He activated a small transmitter hidden in his equipment and sent a coded message toward human space. The signal was brief and used frequencies that Saurian monitors rarely checked. Within hours, human military commanders would begin planning operations based on the intelligence he had gathered. The docking bay was 2 levels above the computer core and heavily guarded under normal circumstances. Emergency protocols had tripled security but also created confusion as guards abandoned their regular posts. Jake used this chaos to move through areas that would normally be impossible to access. Admiral Hyunwei received Jake's transmission aboard the human fleet waiting at the edge of Saurian territory. The signal confirmed that intelligence gathering was complete and extraction could proceed. What happened next would demonstrate human military capabilities in ways that would shock their enemies. Begin approach to the detention facility, Admiral. Hyun ordered her fleet commanders. Prepare for immediate prisoner extraction. The human ships dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of the asteroid field surrounding the Saurian facility. Their arrival triggered every alarm system in the complex and sent General Zixthara rushing to his command center. Report, the general demanded as warning lights flashed throughout the facility. Human fleet approaching our position, sir. 12 ships, including heavy cruisers and assault transports. They're moving directly toward us. Zixthara realized that Jake Morrison's escape was coordinated with a rescue operation. The humans had planned every detail from capture to extraction. Their small, unremarkable prisoner had been the center of a sophisticated military operation. Jake reached the docking bay as the first human ships arrived. Saurian guards were confused and disorganized as emergency protocols conflicted with normal security procedures. Their training had never prepared them for dealing with prisoners who could escape from maximum security cells. Surrender, human security chief Rantok commanded as he cornered Jake near the docking bay entrance. You cannot escape this facility. Jake looked at the massive Saurian warrior and smiled calmly. Chief Rentok, I'm not trying to escape. My mission here is complete. Human assault shuttles breached the docking bay shields and landed with precision. That spoke of careful planning. Marines in advanced combat armor emerged and secured the area with efficiency that demonstrated superior training and equipment. Captain Elena Rodriguez stepped off the lead shuttle wearing a confident expression. Corporal Morrison, mission status report. Intelligence gathered and transmitted, Captain. Facility security protocols analyzed and documented. Ready for extraction. General Zixthara arrived at the docking bay with a full security detachment but stopped when he saw the human forces. His soldiers were outnumbered and outgunned by enemies who had turned his own facility against him. Jake Morrison approached the general and spoke with quiet respect. Sir, you asked what made one human worth 7 Saurian prisoners? The answer is preparation, training, and understanding your enemy. He gestured toward the human ships outside. We studied your methods, learned your weaknesses, and planned accordingly. This facility will need complete security redesign, and your intelligence databases have been compromised. Zixthara stared at the human who had humiliated his entire command structure. You planned this from the beginning. Yes, sir. Sometimes the best way to gather intelligence is to let yourself be captured by people who underestimate you. As Jake boarded the extraction shuttle, he turned back to face General Zixthara one final time. Sir, I recommend you reconsider any assumptions about human military capabilities. We're much more dangerous than we appear. The human fleet departed as quickly as it had arrived, leaving the Saurian facility in chaos. General Zixthara stood in the empty docking bay, surrounded by the wreckage of his reputation and the certainty that everything had changed in this war.